This NYPD lieutenant made $400,000 in 1 year, over $200,000 in overtime alone. Let's talk about it. This is Lieutenant Epps from the New York City Police Department. And Lieutenant Epps is making some serious money. Now, Epps has been with the department for 19 years and is set to retire soon. Now, before we get into the story, let me walk it back a little bit. This is the New York Post, and they did an expose on a cop who was making an astronomical amount of overtime pay.
Lieutenant Quathisha Epps claimed to work more than 1,600 hours of overtime, a staggering total uncovered last month by the New York Post. It allowed Epps to pull in more than $204,000 in overtime pay, on top of her base salary of around $164,000, plus fringe benefits, which put her past the $400,000 mark in 2024. According to payroll records, her boss made around $292,000.
Now, one thing that raised a lot of concerns about this amount of overtime was Epps's job. See, Epps wasn't on the street arresting criminals. She had an administrative job in the NYPD's Chief of Department's office. Now, this meant as a lieutenant, she worked directly for NYPD's Chief of Department, Jeffrey Maddrey. Now, Epps was working about 115 to 120 hours of overtime every month. And even cops on the street were shocked. For instance, this one Bronx cop said, "What administrative work requires you to stay there 115 to 120 hours every effing month to apply for that type of money?" Now, it's interesting to note that Epps had a fantastic career with the NYPD. She was even celebrated by the department, being a 3-time cancer survivor.
I've had 2 bouts with ovarian cancer and my latest challenge with brain cancer. I'm going to be a 3-time cancer survivor. I don't have to remind myself of this. This blue family of mine doesn't even allow me the space to remind myself, because they keep me showered in love.
Now, with that amount of overtime, investigators started looking at if all of this was legit. There were allegations that Epps was just falsifying her overtime payments, and that she was even signing her own overtime, allowing her to rack up these massive amounts. Now, after looking into it, the NYPD said, number one, first thing we're going to do is stop all your overtime. So Epps was barred from doing any more overtime until they figured out what was going on.
The department has now officially launched an internal affairs probe into Epps, which includes looking into allegations of falsified overtime hours, signing off on time slips herself, as well as complaints of her coming into work late, leaving early, or not showing up at all.
Then, in another shocking move, Epps announced that she was retiring early.
Now, the Post has learned Epps filed for retirement this week when she was just shy of 20 years with the department.
Now, because the money was funny, the NYPD decided to put Epps back on patrol, number one. Number two, stop all her overtime. And number three, suspend her without pay until they figured out what was going on. So the walls started closing in on Lieutenant Epps. And then she said, hey, I have a story to tell. She then makes a claim that her boss, the chief of the department, was essentially paying her overtime for sexual favors.
Bombshell allegation of sexual misconduct on the job. Former Chief of Department Jeffrey Maddrey is accused of trading sexual favors for overtime.
Lieutenant Quathisha Epps alleges between June 2023 and this past Monday, Maddrey engaged in efforts to coerce her into performing unwanted sexual favors in exchange for overtime opportunities. She says that included intercourse in the office. According to publicly available payroll data, Lieutenant Epps made a salary last year of over $164,000, but after overtime was factored in, she took home more than $400,000. After refusing his advances in October, she says Maddrey retaliated by orchestrating an intentionally manipulated monthly overtime report, which resulted in a criminal and internal investigation opened against her. Her attorney adds systemic failures within the NYPD allowed Chief Maddrey's predatory behavior to continue unchecked, culminating in its promotion to the department's highest uniform position by Mayor Eric Adams, despite a well-documented history of misconduct and abuse of power.
So Epps said, yes, she was making that overtime, but it was a payoff from her boss to perform sexual favors. And she was good at it because she made over $200,000 in overtime. So now what happens with this boss? Well, he resigns in disgrace.
Jeffrey Maddrey resigned suddenly last night, and now federal investigators are looking into allegations of sexual harassment and hefty overtime payments involving the former high-ranking official.
Jeff Maddrey, the highest-ranking uniformed member, abruptly resigned as chief of department Friday amid startling accusations of sexual misconduct. Maddrey's resignation comes on the same day NYPD Lieutenant Quathisha Epps told the New York Post Maddrey, quote, demanded sexual favors in exchange for massive amounts of overtime, end quote. Now, we did reach out to Epps and her attorney for comment, but they've not responded.
Now, Chief Maddrey is saying all of this is BS. He never assaulted anyone. He never harassed anyone. And the fact that this officer, Lieutenant Epps, got caught falsifying overtime is the reason why she's making these allegations up. Matter of fact, here is Maddrey explaining it.
I can tell you Maddrey's attorney, Landros Landrew, told News 4 his client denies allegations of any sexual interaction and wasn't even involved in approving Epps' overtime. Going on to say, quote, it's very sad when someone gets caught with their hand in the cookie jar, like Lieutenant Epps, and gets suspended for suspicion of stealing overtime, that she is now trying to bring someone else down with these lies, end quote.
But my question is, if these are all lies and BS, then why did he resign? Why resign if these are all lies? You hold the fort and say, okay, check it out, right? I'm open to the investigation. But here is why Maddrey says he's resigning.
Meantime, Landros says he's unaware of any investigation. But when asked why his client resigned, he said the former top cop was already planning to retire soon because he just became a lawyer and will go into private practice, deciding to walk away now amid the allegations.
Now, Epps did an interview with the New York Post and said that she was actually facing foreclosure and was desperate to keep her home when she decided to get in this sex for overtime scheme. Now, Epps even said in her complaint that the chief made fun of the fact that she was doing this sex for overtime scheme to save her house. While he was banging her, allegedly he said, hey, we're going to save your house. Now, in the interview, Epps also said that she felt that she had no choice. She complied under coercion and that she did it obviously for the money, but also because of the power dynamics. Now, I'm going to make some people mad with what I'm about to say. I think everybody here, Epps, the chief, are all disgusting people. I'll tell you why. I don't think Epps was some fawn in the woods who's being just taken advantage of. I think there was an opportunity here to make some overtime to save her house. She found herself with financial problems and she decided willingly to get involved in this scheme. Now, I'll tell you why that's my opinion. The reason number one is that this is all coming to light not because of anything she did. This was all because she got caught out there by the New York Post, finding out that she was the highest paid NYPD officer of the year. Then after she's suspended and they think she's stealing overtime, now all of a sudden we have this EEOC complaint and her boss has been begging her for extra overtime, $200,000 in overtime. Now, my opinion should be pretty clear is that I think the chief is a scumbag. I think the chief was looking for an opportunity. I believe he was in this relationship with this woman, but I don't think she was just some innocent fawn in the woods. Obviously, she had a very, very, very specific reason why she was doing this. She did get the money for doing this, and only time she said there was a problem is when she got caught with her hand in the cookie jar. Not saying that her experiences aren't true, what she claims happened didn't happen. I just think she's trying to play victim now because the blank hit the fan. Now, all of that was a long way to say, I think both of these people are villains. I think she knew she was putting that overtime falsely, and she knew that she wasn't doing the work that was required to make that money, right? She had a house to pay for. And I think the chief knew that she was doing it and was like, hey, I'm okay with it as long as she keeps doing what I want her to do. So, unfortunately, I think both of them are just as bad. But I think her out is, because we're still in, kind of the Me Too woke world, is that, hey, okay, he forced me to do it. But nothing that she's been saying seems to corroborate that. It seems like she was in a bad spot. She needed some cash, and this is the way she decided to make that money. Nowhere does she say he forced or put a gun to her head to do any of this stuff. Only he did was offer her more overtime, and she took it. Tell me where I'm wrong in the comment section. Tell me, Nate, you disagree. You think he's the bad guy and she is just some innocent victim of circumstance. But for those people who think she's just this innocent fawn in the woods, I'll say this. She said she wanted to pay her mortgage, and she damn sure paid her mortgage. Don't forget, like, share, subscribe, do all that great YouTube stuff. My name is Nate the Lawyer, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.